Welcome to this episode of the Yawa vlog. We're here in our ocean studio on the aft deck here in our home above the Caribbean Sea. It's a delight to be with you. I would normally complain that the trade winds are a little blustier than they would normally be. And boy, we've had a dip in our temperatures. I think that the high today is only going to be 84 with a low of a frigid 77 this evening. But if I said such a thing, knowing that the whole continental U.S., all the way down to the tip of Florida, is in a cold streak and facing really century caliber winter storms, I might, generate quite the animosity. So I won't say anything about any of that so as not to torment anybody with the notion that there are warmer places to live. Excuse my bringing up such things, as my Wookiee is now sunning himself on the love seat behind the the program here. When we do our ocean studio, we're most often addressing the series called Coming Home. This is actually the last chapter of the first volume of Coming Home. There are currently uh, 3 volumes available, all free at yadayah.com. There will soon be a fourth. I'm continuing to add to at this point the fourth volume because we came up with a really interesting conclusion. It happens to be the last word picture. It was written by Dode, and it speaks of the intervention that took place towards the end of his life to reconcile his relationship with Yahweh so that he could reconcile ours. It is a real treat for the eyes. And we're going to return to that very subject this evening. We will make progress into the 31st Mashal or proverb on Family Hour this evening. It begins at 6 o'clock Eastern Standard Time and obviously along the East Coast. Oh, well, look what I have here. I have my beloved co-host. This is the great and wonderful Wookiee that now is all upset that my iced tea is not in a cup that is to his liking. Well, considering otherwise how horrid we humans have been to one another over the past 6,000 years, it's truly amazing that without a single altruistic civilization to show for the human experience and all of that time, that God continues to endure the many for the sake of the few. And oh my goodness, do we have a few that are now, I guess it's really many that are making a mess of things in Washington, D.C. and around the world. I wrote on a reply to an Elon Musk text this morning where he was bemoaning somebody that thought it would have been a good thing for Donald Trump to have actually become a martyr in one of the 2 assassination attempts against him, should either one of them have actually been real and not campaign hype. That the reality is that over the next 7.5 years, Donald Trump is going to prove that he is the most deceitful, uh, dangerous, destructive, and deadly man who has ever lived, who has ever occupied this planet. And as a result of him, over these next 7.5 years, there are going to be complete economic collapse. There's going to be the wholesale degradation of nations. Um, we're going to witness world wars and billions are going to die. So this is what we're in store, and this is not my opinion. It isn't something that a far leftist has opined. I'm actually too conservative to be a Republican, and I've surmised all of this by studying the prophets. This is what they have said, and they are never wrong. So it's going to be a rough road from now until the time that the author of this Mizmor or Psalm returns. And that is because for the likes of Dode alone, Yahweh would have done everything that he has proclaimed, and he would do it all over again. It says, as we rejoin the eighth Mizmor or Psalm, truly, when I look at and I observe Ra'ah, I see your heavens and the universe, as well as the spiritual realm, Shamayim, your lofty abode, and also the sky, the stars, and the atmosphere above. The accomplishments, the products and extension, the energy and effort from your fingertips, the moon and the stars, which to reveal the benefits of the relationship you fashioned and formed. What is Enosh, mortal man? Well, that is quite the question. And it says here, continues by saying that by comparison, you are mindful of him, and that the Son of Man, that surely you take stock of him and you relate to him. Goodness. Mizmor, lyrics to sing, Psalm 8:4. Again, as I have shared so many times, there's a lot to unpack here. It begins by the most important person that God ever conceived, Dode, who is known as David, even though Dode is the proper pronunciation of his name from the manuscripts and texts that bear his name that he himself wrote. The name means beloved. And he was the ultimate student of Yahweh. He wrote upwards of 100 Psalms and Proverbs. He is not only the central figure in God's story, there are over 1,100 mentions of Dode's name in the Torah, prophets, and Psalms. Dode is the chosen one. He is the Messiah. He is the Son of God. And he is our Savior. He is the one who fulfilled Pesach, Matzah, and Bikurim in 33 CE. He was the one who was actually crucified. He is the one who took our guilt and carried it into Sheol. He is the one who made first fruits, which is firstborn children, Bikurim, possible. And all of those things were stolen from him and given to the myth of Jesus, which is one of the greatest crimes ever committed by the Jewish people. And it has become the most popular religion based entirely on the lie of identity theft and counterfeit. Dode is the central figure in God's story. He is everything that is ascribed to everyone else, with exception of he is the closest thing that we will ever know to God in our midst, but he is not God. He is Elyon, according to Yahweh, which means he is the fullness of the influence of God in our presence. And Dode is the one who, as king, is returning. He will return on Yom Kippurim in year 3000 or year 6000, which is 33 CE. 2033 CE. That's October 2nd, 7.5 years from now. And it is our mission to proclaim all of this to you. He is the one who is observant here. And by being observant, he's doing one of the things that God asked of us when he created the test case for man in the garden of great joy, which we as the first man collectively failed. And this begins with him being observant. It's what Yahweh said he wanted of Adam, of man, was to be observant, to be responsive, to engage and make a contribution to the relationship and to the world around him, and then to be reliable, to show that he could be trusted. And of course, on all three of these things, Adam failed miserably. Dode did not, although there were times in Dode's life, which we are examining in our program called The Last Word Picture. We'll continue with that this evening, where Dode had a major timeout with Yahweh for bad behavior. This was ultimately resolved, but it would take considerable effort to do so. So Dode begins truly when I look at, when I observe, when I see the universe. And we should just think for a moment. And I've tried to convey this on numerous occasions, but I'm going to state it again. We know that our universe contains, at the very least, 2 trillion galaxies, and that galaxies average anywhere from 100 billion stars to upwards of 4, 5, 600 billion stars. Some have upwards of 1 trillion stars, and that every galaxy is replete with planets and moons. The universe is big by standards that our brains were not even designed to contemplate. And the thing that is so remarkable about all of that, of trillions of galaxies with hundreds of billions of stars each, is that that is only the known universe, the extent of what we can see, because that which is beyond that is so far removed from us that during the time that the universe has existed, the light has not even reached us from things further beyond that point. And the universe is expanding to the point that it will never reach this planet. And that, my friends, is only 5% of the universe. 95% is in a attract force and a repellent one that I actually think are more akin to dimensions. And that's beyond all of that. And the thing that is so remarkable about our universe is that if you study the story of Gan Eden, it's presented as a protected and sheltered enclosure that is conducive to life. And when you look at our planet, it's the exact same thing. It is uniquely positioned such that it is a sheltered enclosure that is conducive to life. There is no other place in our solar system where life can exist. None. Not even close. The moon is exceedingly toxic. So is Mars. There is no way for humans to ever live on either place. You can go visit the moon briefly, but if you don't get back in a hurry, you're going to die. And on Mars, it is only a place that humans can go to die and never to live. And the rest of the solar system is even less hospitable. Beyond the fact that there can be no other place where life can exist in our solar system, and we have the ideal scenario with the perfect size sun and the perfect position within its galaxy, and the perfect rocky type planet with the ideal size gaseous planets outside of it to absorb all of the larger meteor strikes, so that our planet can still exist with the perfect size moon and the perfect place for for us to enjoy tides and to have our orbit be stabilized as it is, all of things which are necessary to life. And of course, this great molten core that is inside of our planet that creates this magnetic protection from cosmic radiation. Otherwise, again, life would be annihilated. But it's not just that the Earth is a larger version of the microcosm that God created in Gan Eden, or that Yahweh is transforming the entire Earth to the conditions of Eden when He returns, or just prior to His return, 10 days prior to His return with Dode on Teruah in 2033, year 6000 Yah. So that we have 1,000 years to get the Eden experience right, so that we can do as Dode ultimately did, show ourselves observant, thoughtful, responsive, and reliable. What I also want to share with you is that there is this grossly over fixation on physical bodies in religion. Oh, they have to be covered up in Christianity and Islam and Judaism. You can't see the flesh. Flesh must be really bad, bad. They are teased such that people actually think that if those that go to hell are going to have their bodies tortured. That's what the Quran says. That's what the New Testament seems to infer. They believe that in heaven, that there's also a decadent treat of some sort that are available to physical bodies. That's why the religion of Christianity is based upon bodily resurrection. It's the dumbest thing ever. While you have mass, while you are comprised of matter, you're stuck on this planet. Might as well make the best of it. You ain't going anywhere. Yeah, we can go to the moon for a few days, but any longer, and you're going to die there. And you aren't going to go anyplace else other than to die. That's it. And the problem, the limiting factor is our bodies. No physical object can be accelerated to the speed of light. It would take infinite energy to do so. Even at 99.9% of the speed of light, it would take more energy than is produced by the sun to propel a spacecraft. And even then, it would be incredibly vulnerable. And even then, you wouldn't get anywhere within lifetimes. I mean, the closest star systems are comprised of red dwarfs. There's no life around a red dwarf. It's too toxic. And that's 4.5 light years away. Our own galaxy, the Milky Way, is 100. Was it 100,000 light years across? 100,000. Just in our neighborhood, to find the nearest star that would be conducive to having a planet around it where life could exist, you're looking at 5,000 light years one way, even if you knew exactly where it was. 5,000 light years. I mean, how many generations is that? And you'd have to create a spaceship large enough to have artificial gravity and enough food and space and entertainment for people to go through generations after generation after generation. You'd never get a spacecraft even to half the speed of light with all the energy that's available in our entire sun to make that journey. And it would take 5,000 years. And if you got there and it was a disappointment, it's all over. There's no coming back. And that's just our galaxy. The distances are so large. And the speed constraint is the speed of light. You can't warp it. There are no such thing as wormholes. You can't exceed it. And even at that speed, it's a multi-generational process, a millennial process to get anywhere. And that's just in one of the 2 trillion galaxies. And that's just in the neighborhood, in the same arm of just one of 2 trillion galaxies. So everything that's out there is nothing but a sign of God's magnificence. What it is. And an invitation. Do you want to accept what he's offering, which is to transform the carrier of our nephesh souls, which are essentially energy based, and enveloping them in light energy such that we can go anywhere and do anything, where we are enormously enriched and empowered and enabled, becoming eternal, because, well, light just is. Time exists on a photon of light. That means that you can go from one side to the other, not just of a galaxy, but the entire universe, in literally no time, because Uh, time simply is on a photon of light. And if you were, no matter what the distance is, um, speed is distance over time. And if time is zero, the blink of an eye gets you anywhere. It's amazing what God is offering. And when you come to appreciate the difference between energy and matter, then you have an appreciation of what God's offering. This is what Dode was trying to convey to us here. When you consider the universe, then you have an appreciation for all that God's offering. It is one of the reasons we are so lucky to live in the time that is enlightened by the likes of Albert Einstein, who not only told us that time is relative, so that we know time does not flow at the same rate for all observers, and in fact, time simply is on a photon of light at light speed, and that time slows in the presence of great energy or great matter, and that it is relative to the observer. It helps us understand how prophecy works and how we become immortal and how we're enriched and everything else. It explains the nature of the Hebrew language, where verbs are not stuck in the ordinary flow of time. It explains exactly what God is offering to us. And in his most famous equation, E equals mc squared, what he is saying is that energy and mass, energy and matter, mass is simply the measure of matter, that they are equivalent in the same sense. They're the same thing. They just aren't. They're vastly different amounts of the same thing. That matter is a diminished form of energy. You have to multiply matter times or mass times the square of the speed of light if you want them to be equivalent. So that is what's being conveyed here. And it is essential for you to know that while you can look up there and see millions upon millions of stars at night, that no human, no material being is ever going to travel between them. And that the only way that we have access to all of that and enjoy it, and God can share it with us, is for us to be transformed, where we go from physical bodies to having our soul enveloped in light energy. So this then continues, and it says that after, truly, when I observe your heavens, the universe, and the spiritual realm, the accomplishments of your fingers. And the next thing here is the moon. Now, Dode spoke of the moon here and the stars, but not of the sun. You know why? Because in Bereshith, the opening book of the Torah, in the first chapter, in the fourth day, Yahweh makes an interesting distinction between the greater and lesser luminaries. And while the inference is that he's talking about the sun and the moon, and that the sun creates light and it's greater, and the moon reflects light and it's smaller, that he's actually talking about two men. The greater luminary is Dode. You're listening to the lesser luminary. And so Dode has been reacquainted with his role in the restoration of life on the planet, and he's beginning to know who he is. And so now he is appreciative that the moon reflects his brilliance during the time of darkness. He also recognizes that in the fourth day, Yahweh doesn't say something was created. He says that the greater and lesser luminaries, so they're both great, but collectively they serve as signs of the Moedim. The Moedim are the 7 annual meetings with Yahweh. Pesach, Matzah, and Bikurim, which Dode fulfilled. Shabuah, which is on our horizon, and which is my responsibility to cultivate. Followed by Teruah, which is the final ingathering. It is also that next day, it is on the Shabbat of September 24th of 2033, year 6000 Yah, it is when we will experience the sacrifice of the red heifer. And the mortal remnant of Yisrael will be brought into Jerusalem and purged of their religiosity so that they are ready to celebrate the great homecoming and Dod's return with Yahweh. It is also interesting, of course, on that day that the moon will eclipse the sun, just as the Earth's shadow will eclipse the moon as we return to Gan Eden 15 days thereafter on Sukkah. So he's speaking of the moon, and he's speaking also of the light of the stars, which is really God's invitation. Do you want to come visit them? They're there for you to see. I want to show them to you. Let me take my Wookiee and have him come back down. All there for you to see. Because collectively, they do reveal the way to the benefits of the relationship. And the way that they, Asher, reveal the way to the benefits of the relationship is that they tell us all about light. They tell us about the magnitude of this creation. It's one of the reasons why I'm just astonished that there's a religion like Christianity, which has reduced God to the size of a man. God is not a man. Men cannot kill God. A God that created a universe which is at least 4-dimensional, and I think 6, to explain dark matter and dark energy, the attractive and the repulsive forces, which comprise 95% of the universe, the known universe. And that the Shamayim, the heavenly realm, spiritual realm, is beyond that. So it would be in the 7th dimension. For a being to create something of the magnitude of our universe, he must be a dimension beyond it. It has to be. It's impossible for somebody in the same dimension to create something enormous within that dimension. He would have to use the existing elements of the dimension to create something, just like, I built this house. But I built it out of materials that were already here. To create something out of nothing, you have to be a dimension beyond. And when we understand divinity, then you understand that God can't enter our dimension. He can't even enter. All of God won't fit in the entire universe that he created. He's a dimension beyond it. It's like saying that you want to put Walt Disney into one of the flatland cells that he created for Minnie and Mickey Mouse. Can't be done. He can relate through symbols, through implements, through words, but he can't enter their realm. And it is the same thing with God. God cannot be a man. And when you recognize the magnitude of the universe, any rational person should immediately reject Christianity and say, this is the dumbest idea ever. So the stars, the magnitude of them definitely convey this. But what most people don't recognize as to why he said that the moon does as well. Because it is this job, the job of the lesser luminary of Bereshith Genesis 1, to reveal Asher. Asher happened to be the first word that I translated 24 and a half years ago. Asher is the name that has been ascribed by Yah to my wife, the very woman who helped Dod regain his standing with God. The program, again, we're going to return to this evening. Asher is the name here of my beloved lab here at my feet. Asher was one of the tribes of Yisrael. Leah, back 4,000 years ago, said that she would be forever proclaimed as Asher, blessed and beneficial. Asher is one of the most amazing words in the Hebrew lexicon. Dod obviously appreciates it. He included it here, but it's the first word he wrote in this first psalm. It's the first word I translated 24 and a half years ago when analyzing one of the richest and most important prophecies regarding Dowd in 2 Samuel 7. And it defines a relationship between things. It is translated as blessing and benefit. It is to show the way to receive the benefits of a relationship, which is how I've rendered it here. And so that is the lesser luminary's primary position, the primary purpose of the moon. And so Dowd has laid it all out here. I'm not certain that anybody has picked up on it or understood that prior to me sharing it with you here, but it is nonetheless there for all of us to see. And that is the purpose of us analyzing God's communication to us so that we can communicate it to you. And so the very Son of God says, you have fashioned and formed what is all of this. And he says, so against all of this, what is Enosh? What is a mortal man? Why did God create mortal man? And, here we are on a planet where, there could be life someplace else, but we're never going to see it, ever. Nor are they ever going to come here. It's impossible. Not unlikely. It's absolutely impossible. No. God's saying, why do we exist? What is mortal man when you consider the overall scope of this universe? I mean, our planet isn't even a speck of sand in our solar system. And it isn't even a speck of sand in every beach, every ocean, every desert on Earth by comparison to our galaxy. And our galaxy is literally nothing by consideration of space. And we are nothing compared to the scope of our planet. So what is mortal man? What is Enosh? By the way, I made the correction yesterday, but I want to make it again today. It was brought up to me that I confused Enoch with Enosh. Enosh is a son related to Noah, and his name means mortal man. Enoch, the person that walked with God and then God took, is actually from the CH sound. It gets very poorly transliterated into English, but it's from a root that says, this man is trained and disciplined. He has been instructed, he has been taught, and he is resolute in what he is going to offer. So it would be a very odd name for somebody that we know nothing about, other than he was and he is no more, other than he conducted his life with Yahweh. But he serves as really a indicator of what this job of serving as the lesser luminary is all about. Because you will come and go throughout time to accomplish things that God wants done. But the purpose is to recognize that humankind, like all animals, we're mortal. There's lots of confusion in that in religion, to think that a human soul is something that's special, but it's not. Every animal, that would be every bug, bird, snake, slug, snail, we all have souls. That's what differentiates animals from plants. A soul is that which can perceive what's happening, can be observant, pay attention to what's going on in their environment, and then respond to it. It has the first two things that Yahweh is looking to accomplish with us, looking for us to do, to observe our environment and to respond to him. That is what a soul enables us to do. A Nasama, which he gave to humankind uniquely, making Adam like God, is the ability to accomplish the third thing that God is looking for, and that's for us to be reliable, so that we can discern right and wrong, good and bad, and if we make a mistake, get up from it, learn from it, and grow as a result. prove that we can be trusted. But all souls are mortal. There is a way for souls to become immortal in one or two ways. So we need to recognize that the overwhelming preponderance of souls, probably in the range of 99.9999% of souls, really, are mortal. At the end of a person's or animal's existence, they simply cease to exist. All that is known of them is in the memory of those who interacted with them. No penalty for them, but no reward either. No heaven, no hell. It solves the conundrum that agnostics and atheists have with the religious notion of a God that would say, either obey me and love me, or I will send you to hell to be tortured forever, because such a God wouldn't be lovable or anything other than sadistic. But it solves that problem, because when you read through the Torah, prophets, and Psalms, you very quickly recognize the vast majority of souls simply cease to exist. Death is the end of their life. No reward, no punishment. Now, you can earn an eternal stay in Sheol. Sheol is hell. It is equivalent to a black hole. There's no fires, there's no torture. It's just a place where there is no escape, and time is eternal. That's what it is. And so there are souls who have earned the necessity of going there because they have done something that misled others away from God, or they deliberately harmed God's people in a horrible way. And for those souls, they will spend an eternity as recompense because God's fair in Sheol. And then there are approximately 1 in a million human souls, according to God's math, 1 in a million, that are going to come to know him, be observant, pay attention to the terms and conditions of his covenant, accept them, act upon them, engage in such a way that you demonstrate that you're willing to be observant, be thoughtful, respond to what God is offering and expecting, and then show that you're reliable, that you're steadfast, that he can trust you. And for those individuals, there is an eternity as your soul is enveloped in light energy, and you have the opportunity to exist in God's presence. Those are the options. And that's the difference between a mortal and one who has gone beyond that. And then he says that by comparison between the moon, the greater luminary, and the stars, that compared to man, that you would be mindful of Zakar. Now, Zakar is a loaded term. It doesn't just mean Zakar Hu, mindful of him. Zakar as a verb means to remember, and that's nice. But the fact is that Zakar also means man. So if you combine the verbal root Zakar and Zakar as the noun, written exactly the same way, it speaks of the most memorable of men. And here again, you would go back to the opening chapter of the Torah of Genesis, Bereshith 1. And on the fourth day of creation, God explains that two of the men that you should be mindful of are the greater and lesser luminaries, because they serve as the sign of the Moedim. As I had shared previously, Dode fulfilled the first three, Pesach, Matzah, and Bakurim. I'm responsible for the next two, which are Shabuah and Teruah. Dode returns with Yahweh on Kippurim, and then we collectively teach, instruct, set as ourselves up as examples to be followed for the mortal remnant that is allowed into the return of Eden on Sukkah, on shelters in 2033, such that we collaborate together. Dode becomes the tree of lives. I am the tree of knowledge. I'm not making claims of who I am for reasons of self-aggrandizement. I would prefer to be anonymous in this story, but that's not what Yahweh prefers. And my responsibility is to do as he has chosen. So I'm going to tell you what he has said. And so the most memorable of man would be this son of man. It's Wah ben Adam. And that's particularly important because Dode is the person who helped us develop an appreciation for the fact that we could achieve what Adam failed. Adam failed to be observant. He was not particularly thoughtful. He did not engage and make any contribution to the garden or to his relationship with Yahweh. And when he failed, when he made a mistake, he doubled and tripled down, becoming all the worse for it. So Dode is just the opposite. Here, you're seeing him speak of how observant he is, looking at the universe and considering the contrast between a mortal man and the universe, and then speaking of the role of the moon and the stars in conveying the path to receive the benefits of this relationship, and then making the comparison between the two, and then drawing right down to the most memorable of men and to the Son of Man. So he is not only observant and thoughtful, he is also engaged because he wrote all this down for us to contemplate thereafter. An exceedingly important thing for him to have accomplished, him to have engaged in. And as we are discovering in our evening program, the final word picture, Dode made his share of mistakes. So he proves that God is not looking for perfect. That would be boring. It would be counterproductive, actually, for him to have been perfect, for any of us to be perfect. He's looking for someone that when they make a mistake can recover from it, because it is only through our failures that we are forged in terms of a character that is capable of showing that we have value, that we have merit. And so Dode is the opposite of Adam. So he is the Son of Man that would matter most to God. And this says, surely you take stock of him and you relate to him. You relay your message to him. When Yahweh began communicating through Moshe, and they met on the top of Mount Choreb, and Moshe came down with the book of Bereshith, Genesis, and he came down with the 10 statements on the 2 tablets of stone twice because he broke the first set. He was naturally angry that he came down after hearing God speak against religion and having saved the people from religion and politics and the caste system, that they were out being religious and had created and were worshiping a golden calf. And he says, he broke that set. So he came into the second set. So what God decided that he would do is that he told Moshe, you got 3 days here to get them all cleaned up and all prepped and everything and all prepared. And I'm going to bring my fiery light. It's not all of God, but it's a representation of God through light. And I'm going to come down and I'm going to speak directly to the children of Israel. So you got 3 days to get their act together, get all prepared, to get all scrubbed up, their best outfits. We'll have this meeting. And the purpose of the meeting is for me to reassure them that I am speaking through you, that this is the way that we have thought is the best way to communicate, because you're obviously literate. You can write all this down. If I communicate it to you, then not only can you communicate it to them, but it can be retained accurately throughout the ages. So God was already committed to that plan. When he came down and his brilliant fire, light, was present before the children of Israel, and his booming voice was speaking directly to them, the children of Israel said, no. You need to go away. We don't want to see you or hear from you again. And while it's stated that bluntly in Devarim, in Yahweh's voice, it is couched a little bit nicer in the first episode, where it says we prefer you to communicate through the likes of Moshe. And God's response to this was, I agree. It is in their best interest. We're going to have a far higher likelihood of success if I choose people along the way that I prepare and that are properly committed, that I can speak through, as opposed to directly to masses of people. So this idea that God answers your prayer and that he spoke to you or said this, that's nonsense. God speaks through very few people. And when Moshe's sister Miriam in the 11th chapter of Numbers was uh, complaining, and I guess it was the 12th chapter of Numbers. It's a meltdown in the 11th chapter. It's a different story, but powerful. The 12th chapter of Numbers. And she has this meltdown. And after Moshe's meltdown, she says, we too, speaking of she and Aaron, also speak for God. And God says, no, you don't. And this is a person who had been labeled a prophetess because she led the women's chorus on the Song of the Sea as they passed through the Gulf of Aqaba unscathed, and the Pharaoh's army was drowned in that process. And God said, no, you don't. When I speak through someone, they know it. First of all, I choose people based upon their responsiveness. And he said that Moshe was the most responsive. But beyond that, they know it and you know it, because I have made it abundantly clear. I will have so many affirmations and designations, prophecies, and overt statements about that individual. As I say, the first time I mentioned is in the first chapter of Bereshith, Genesis, first chapter of the Torah. And in one of the last chapters of the Torah, in Devarim, there's a better part of a chapter dedicated to the Nakar, the observant foreigner, who will be present in these last days to do precisely what I'm doing for you now. So God says, no, if you're going to speak for me, you know it. And so here we recognize that what Dode is saying is that you find memorable men, you make them known. There's no anonymity here. They know who they are, and you clearly state that they're speaking for you. You prove it. And then it's up to the rest of the world, after you've taken stock in these sons of man and that you relate to them, for us then to relate to the rest of you, to convey your message, because God has chosen this means of communicating with us. And the reason he chooses it is that he's not overpowering in this way. You can choose to deny him if you want to. You can choose to turn a myth into a man god if you're a Christian, or Hashem is your replacement god if you're into Judaism, or you can turn a snake into God, or a rock if your preference is Islam. So it gives the world the opportunity to create their gods in their own image and worship them, and to reject Yahweh, or to use all of the information he has communicated to embrace him, to accept him, to act upon what he has provided. You just have to do the same four things that were requested of Adam, that Dode actually did, that I'm trying to model here before you. That means you must be observant. You must pay attention to what's going on, to what Yahweh had to say. Then you must be thoughtful, such that you think about what has been conveyed. And next, then, this is very difficult for most people. You got to be responsive. God's not taking deadbeats into Shamayim. He is not interested in the oxymoron of a one-sided relationship. He is only interested if you're going to make a contribution. And then, most important of all, you must be reliable. You've got to show that if you make a mistake, you can learn from it. If you fall, you can get back up. That your character can be forged in fire, so that he can trust you. So that's a fairly comprehensive analysis, is it not, of one statement, Mizmor, lyrics to sing, Psalm 8:4. And I think my companion here, the king of the cables is writing down notes and saying we could cut a short out of that segment right there. It ends at this timestamp and begins at that timestamp. Probably what he was doing at the moment I'm looking over there. Adam probably caught him red-handed doing so. The fact is that we're at a place now where I have given through here's an example of some of them, of the 35 books that are on the shelf at yadayah.com, all free in their entirety to you. You can read them in page turner format, which is really pretty cool. You can read them in PDF format, both in their entirety and absolutely free. You can read them on your cell phone, on a tablet, on your computer, on your television, however it is comfortable for you. And also, if you want the paperbacks, which you see behind me, you can buy them. Google my name, Craig Wynn, or at the Yada Yahweh series at Amazon, and you will find the entire series presented royalty free. So you have all those options available to you in this regard, and they present the entire swath of what I'm sharing, and they actually prove it, providing documented evidence that makes the case for God irrefutable. But now, as we draw close to the Shavua harvest, my job is to amplify what I have come to know in a way that might resonate with you if you're hearing this for the first time or you're trying to grow with us. So I actually have two missions now. I'm trying to prepare the covenant family so they're devoted and can make a contribution now as we enter the last 7.5 years, to inspire them to know, to grow, to understand, and to be productive with their lives, because so much is riding on it. And I know they want to do things that God will be proud of, and they'll be proud of as we go forward throughout time, and preparing them to serve mightily as we enter the Garden of Eden on Sukkah, re-enter it. But I'm also trying to share things where you could, if you're a first-time listener and you're open-minded and you're not religious, you would say, I've heard a lot of people talk about things that would be called scripture, but boy, this man's understanding of it, the insights he is deriving from every word, are so far beyond everyone else. I posted something today. It was a rabbi that was making some absolutely absurd comment about the creation account, that it has been my assessment that I know and understand more about Yahweh, the Torah, the Bereth covenant, the Moedim, restoring witnesses to the eternal testimony, and even Dod as the Son of God. I know and understand more about each than all of the rabbis who have ever lived, and all of the pastors, and all of the priests, and all of the popes, and all of the scholars combined. And every day as I listen to somebody make their case, they prove my point. So my hope is that you will listen and that you will gain from this. Well, the reason that the universe is so big is partly so that we would know our place in it and our relative position within it, but it actually needs to be big for us to exist, because we're the product of a second generation star. We had to have a supernova explosion to create the heavy elements that comprise not only our planet, the things that appear to be solid and material, but also our bodies are comprised of them. We are stardust. We are the residue of an exploding supernova. So we have to be a second generation star. And for all that to take place, we have to be in a first generation galaxy, which is what our Milky Way happens to be. And it is so large that these things could transpire over the time span that is necessary for them to occur. And if you say, well, why would God put up with 14 billion years of all of this? Because in the seventh dimension, where he exists, way beyond the constraints of being stuck in time, it can all play out in the blink of an eye over a long period of time. He can take moments in of it and elongate them and enjoy them. And he can take entire millennia and they go by in a blink without him even noticing anything happened. That's pretty cool. I don't know if you're like me, but when I see something that I think is just really gorgeous, it might be a seaside scene because I love the ocean. It could be maybe a beautiful waterfall, perhaps a gorgeous sunset, perhaps it's a rainbow, perhaps it's just a beautiful setting someplace. And nature is typically the things that I value in this way, or I'm just in a wonderful place with someone I dearly love. Uh, I will close my eyes, and after having taken a really comprehensive gaze at everything, being as observant and thoughtful as I can possibly be, trying to absorb everything, I will then close my eyes and I will go through my mind and say, how much of what you saw can you remember? That you can transfer even from short term into long term memory and keep this as a treasure filed away forever. And all of the light and the sounds and the smell and the perspective and the shadows and feeling yourself in that environment. And I got reasonably good at it because what I was doing was I was curating something very special. And I was helping myself be able to elongate a moment, very much like Yahweh can do if he says, when you discovered something that was wonderful about the Torah, like the greater and lesser luminaries in Bereshith 1, he can enjoy that moment of discovery, knowing that we would get there and saying, yeah, that's my boy. I knew you'd find it. That's why it was there for you to understand. Or when we come upon, as we have grown over 24 years together, and we come upon the final word picture, the last mashal, and the 31st proverb, and now it resonates with us. And every aspect of it, every word, every nuance of it is a celebration of everything that we have collaborated with together over these years. It's God can take a moment like that and turn it into a lifetime experience. So this is part of having an appreciation of our universe, of time, of light, and of everything that is there. So scientifically, of course, there are many more reasons, all of which are interesting, including the fact that we are the product of first generation stars. It does us well to consider why Yahweh created us and why he continues to relate to us when he is greater than we can possibly imagine. And yet he presents himself as approachable, as humble, as loving and kind. And yet we are infinitesimally small by comparison, which is what God wants to resolve. He wants us to enable us, to make us essentially infinitely greater than we are. And that's the whole reason for having the Garden of Eden test and for us going back to that opportunity so that we can demonstrate we can be trusted in this regard, because for God to make us immortal and empowered so that we're more similar in terms of our knowledge and understanding and capabilities, he needs to be able to trust us at that point. And that's what this is all about. That's why I'm glad to have Dode return to a discussion of mortal man in comparison to Yahweh and in comparison to the scope of the universe. Now, there is another interesting reason, one that reveals our position within space-time. Yahweh calculated the exact amount of energy required to create the stage for the kind of life that we enjoy within the formula of relational time that he desired. There's 6,000 years exactly that are going to transpire from the time that we were taken out of the garden, where God caused the fall of man for our benefit, to the time that we'll be allowed back into the garden on Sukkah for our benefit. And for all of that to play out over that period of time, and with humans having the opportunity to show that there could be a few of us that are going to get this right and earn that opportunity, the universe had to be this large. And from the perspective of the creator, at creation, the universe is still 624 days old and about to enter the seventh. I did the math so that you might understand it and appreciate it. But uh, 14 billion years and 6 24-hour days from the perspective of the creator at creation, at Big Bang, which is a term that Yahweh was the first to use, is exactly the same length of time, because we now know from the Wilkinson probe that the residual microwave radiation from the Big Bang itself has time dilated. That's called the dilation of time, to 10 to the 12th power. So it flows faster than it does on Earth because of the great velocity and enormous mass that would have been there at the time. And that makes the 14 billion years since the light first began to coalesce into matter and time began to flow equal to exactly 6 24-hour days. Take 14 billion years, divide them by 10 to the 12th power. See what you come to. 6 24-hour days. Pretty spectacular, isn't it, in terms of an insight from our God? It is now, we are just 7.5 years shy of 6,000 years since Adam and Chava were expelled from the garden, and for their benefit, so giving them the opportunity to grow, to learn, to experience what it is like to observe, to make a contribution to life, and then to fall, but yet get back up, wiser for the experience. And we will, and now we're in the first months of 2026. And just as I say, 7.5 years away from Dod's return with Yahweh, and much closer than that to the Shabua harvest. So the universe, which is 6 dimensions, with Yahweh existing in the seventh, is also replicated through the 6 steps that we take to God through the Moedim leading to the seventh, which is Sukkah, and the 6,000 years that lead us to this celebration of camping out with God for 1,000 years during Sukkah, just as we celebrate the Shabbat each week in remembrance of that. It is also the underlying contract of Shabbat. So this includes the 4, of course, when we talk about dimensionality that we know, which is space-time. We have height, we have width, we have depth, and then we have time. Those are the 4 dimensions of space-time. But we can add to those the unknown source of separation and that of attraction, which are 95% of the universal composition. They're called dark energy and dark matter only because energy is repellent and matter is attractive, and dark means we don't understand what they are. We can't see them. Well, we will certainly understand them. Well, at least the 1 in a million will, quite soon. Now, returning to the question that was posed by Dode and Psalm 8:4, as a father, I know the answer, and that is by design. Every parent should be able to recognize the obvious, that Dode has made this personal, initially presenting Yahweh's viewpoint from the perspective of children, and now speaking of the Son of Man. I'm going to personalize it further. One of the reasons that I don't attempt to pray away my struggles with family, and there are many, is that without them, I would have no basis upon which to appreciate Yah's vantage point. He has dealt with the fracture in the covenant family and with his people, the children of Israel, since their inception. So while my experience is limited to a single home, and then to the covenant family, which I have given birth to and have overseen these in these last years leading to Yahweh's return, I'm a decidedly imperfect father that has enjoyed some wonderful relationships over time, and I've seen others fracture. So it wasn't always, that way, but it is by enduring this and coming to understand the pain of a fractured family, that we can empathize with God. It's why Yahweh asked Hosea to marry a temple prostitute, a religious whore, so that he would understand the pain that is caused by Israel, by Jews being religious and cheating on God, by the false gods of religion and all that goes along with it. So God is essentially saying, what is it with us that it's so hard for us to perceive these things, that we also treat each other so poorly, even within families? All families are fractured. Why do we reject God's desire to enrich, empower, and liberate us when that is what he is offering? So through life experiences, I have come to appreciate Yahweh's struggles with Israel, with whom he calls his bride. Just as Yahweh pronounced his divorce from Israel, now through Hosea, I also have experienced a divorce. I divorced my wife of 34 years because I could no longer resolve or endure what is the aches and pains of borderline personality disorder and the resulting propensity to be dishonest, mean-spirited, and condescending. And it became way too depressing. I'm sure, what Hosea experienced when married to Gomer. And by being free of that, and now having the opportunity to experience the kind of love and trust that I have with Leah, my wife, now I have a much better appreciation of what God has endured and is disappointed by and what he is offering. In fact, there was a moment a couple of years ago when I was witnessing Muslims attack southern Israel in the October 7th horrid attack, an all-Islamic attack against God's people, that I instantly recognized that the best source of information as to why they did this was in a book I had written 20 years earlier called Prophet of Doom. It's the first book that Yahweh asked me to write in terms of, Tea with Terrorists and Prophet of Doom combined, to explain the enemy of his people, Islam. And I knew that that was the best answer for God's people, but I also knew it was the only book that I had not gone back to correct, that I hadn't improved over the years, with others, having rewritten and enhanced them, scores of times over that period. But this one I had not. So what I wanted to do, though, was continue to finish Coming Home 3 that I was working on, because spending time with Dode and Yahweh is fun. Spending time with Allah and Muhammad is like, being asked to go down to hell with them. They're repulsive. So I recall telling God, it's surely Prophet of Doom is good enough. I don't want to go back there. Let's just make progress with Coming Home. I don't want to do that. And God, just as clearly as I'm talking to you, said, I've taken care of you. Now you take care of my people. Well, the result is the 5 volumes now of Goddamn Religion, all free at yadayah.com. Completely rewritten from the first word to the last word, and greatly expanded and improved as a result of that collaboration. And I'm glad that we did it. Now, of course, that it's over. So, I understand what God is frustrated by, the headaches that we have given him. But I also know what he is trying to achieve and how wonderful it is. It's interesting in all of this is the need for a restoration, a renewal of the one and only covenant. Since according to the Torah, a man cannot remarry a wife from whom he is divorced. It was Yahweh presenting himself as the husband of Yisrael, as and as a result, they were his children, and he uses that metaphor. But it isn't Yahweh that is going to remarry Yisrael. No, out of the mortal remnant of Yisrael that returns, that we cleanse through the sacrifice of the Adam of Parah. It is Dode who is the yearning groom of Numbers 5, and Yisrael that is the cleansed bride, by way of Numbers 19 and the sacrifice of the red heifer, so that it is Dode. that is going to restore the family, with the family reunion that is going to also celebrate a marvelous wedding at that time. And there will be, I think there's two weddings at that time. I don't have absolute proof of this. Leah and I are both pretty convinced that on Yom Kippurim in year 2033, there's going to be two weddings. I'm going to renew my vows with my beloved Leah, a Goy and a Yehud coming together. And the ultimate Yehud and Dod is going to have a Yisraelite woman that will be curated and properly attired for the wedding by my wife. And that wedding will also take place simultaneously. So it is a marvelous fulfillment of what is Jeremiah 31. So in spite of the perceived difference in scale and the an ability that Yahweh has versus a mortal man, Yahweh actually created us as close to himself as was prudent, such that we could relate to him and he to us without being overwhelmed or underwhelmed. And endowed with these attributes, particularly with the neshama, our conscience, and with the benefits of the covenant and it enriching and empowering us, Yahweh will enhance our status, bringing us to the point where he has bridged this gap through a straightforward transformation from matter to energy. That's why we're asked to walk into the presence of that enlightening fire during the Moed Mikra, because our physical bodies are transformed into light energy and can carry our souls in a way that they are transformed, emancipated, empowered, and enabled. And we move from being stuck in 3 dimensions to 4, 5, 6, and 7, with infinite increases all along the way. I'll read one more passage. My guess is that we are at the hour mark. We don't want to go too long today in this program because we have a tendency to go fairly long during our family hour, and we're on really interesting material tonight. But we did want to get this added program in. So this is what is said next, and it's spoken by Dod. Therefore, you, speaking to Yahweh, have made him somewhat diminished, withholding something. Chesar, Hu Ma'at. You've caused him to be a little less empowered, lacking, and thus needing something to sustain life. Slightly lower from God, men Elohim, than the Almighty. And yet you surrounded and enveloped him, Atar, you crowned him, you honored him, you enriched him, you embellished him, providing for him the blessings and adornments, the symbols associated with status, with honor and respect, with an abundance of riches, with a powerful presence and a glorious reward, kabod. One of our one of Dod's favorite words. We'll talk about that in a moment. Along with the most appealing attributes, valuable qualities, and useful aptitudes. Mizmor lyrics, song to sing, 8-5. Wow. Okay. Again, what I want to be able to do is to expand upon what Dod is trying to share with you. I want to go from being words that you hear, you saw perhaps on your screen as Rich was presenting them along with this program. But what I want you to do is, as now without the words on the screen, just in your mind's eye, I want you to think about what Dod had to say. And maybe you need to close your eyes even as you process this, because words are the ultimate tools. They're most powerful implements in the universe. They are the very glue of relationships that bond us together. They are the medium of thought. We think with words. They are also, of course, the essence of communication and the conduit to knowledge and understanding. They're powerful, powerful things. Therefore, you have made him somewhat diminished, withholding something. You can go back to the creation account and God said that he created man in his image. And the word that he used for image, Teslam, says that he was created in a lesser dimension. He is talking about the difference between, for example, my physical body and the shadow that I might cast. It reflects, not reflects, but the outline of who I am. But it's a one-dimensional construct where I am three, and so it's very much like that word would be equivalent to the difference between the blueprint that I drew for this home and the finished product. Okay, so 2 dimensions becomes 3 dimensions, or 3 dimensions becomes 2 dimensions. This is the variation here. So Dode is onto that. He understands that we are diminished from Yahweh. We have enormous capability, but we are diminished from who God is. He is at least a dimension beyond us, and as it turns out, we're in 3.5 dimensions. He is in 7, so he's 3.5 dimensions beyond us. Each dimension is an increase, by the way, to an infinitive degree. So he says, yet you surrounded and enveloped him, humankind, with kabod. Kabod means capability, abundance, power, presence, a glorious reward, honor, great significance. So we are more significant to God, at least those of us who are paying attention to him, thinking about him, responding to him, and ensuring ourselves reliable in our service to him. We are more valuable to God than all of the galaxies combined. That is the level of respect that actually God has for us. You know, we can earn God's respect. As Dode figured that out, that is a powerful concept. It's something that I didn't know until our most recent foray back into the garden, because I was trying to understand precisely what God was going to do when he invited us back. Why was he inviting us back into the garden? To understand that, you have to understand what took place in the garden. And it was there that I discovered that it wasn't Chawa, who people mistake as Eve, who erred by chomping down on a bit of fruit. The decision to cause the fall of man was made by God before Chawa was even created, before the woman was conceived. In fact, she was conceived so that man wouldn't be alone post-separation. And that it's God that caused the fall. And it's because in that cloistered environment, there was no opportunity for Adam to be anything more than he was. He was already failing to be observant. He was failing to be thoughtful. He was not as God wanted, which was for him to work, for him to engage, for him to respond to God. And as a result, God knew that when tested, he would fail, and he did. So he couldn't be relied upon. But we can succeed where Adam failed. We can earn God's respect. And the result is to be bequeathed with an abundance of riches, be made vastly more powerful. And it's a glorious reward if we demonstrate ourselves worthy of God's respect. Now, sure, he's infinitely superior to us. And you would say, how in the world can an infinitely superior being come to respect an infinitely inferior being? And the answer is because he designed the whole system for that outcome. It is what he wants most of all. If you think it's prideful for me to say that I am earning God's respect, and that there are those in the covenant family who are working every day along with me, who have earned and are earning greater respect with Yahweh. No, it's the ultimate way of respecting Yahweh to say this, because this is what he's trying to achieve. And here's the most important person in the universe, Dode, recognizing that God wants to see us as kabod. He wants to honor us and respect us. He wants to lavish a abundance of riches on us. He wants us to have a more powerful presence. He wants our significance to be extraordinary. There is a line that is so important relative to kabod that is found not only in 2 Samuel 6, which is where Michal, who is a embittered woman that is Dod's first wife, is mocking Dod for dancing in the regalia of the high priest, the ephod, but otherwise naked. Before all Yisrael, as the Ark of the Covenant is being brought into Yisrael, orchestrated by Obed-Edom, and at God's direction. And at the end, she says, you know, you've embarrassed yourself. You are not kabod with God or these people, particularly with the Amma. And Dod's response was, okay, well, I'm going to go to the Amma and we'll see what the Amma have to say about whether or not I'm kabod or not. And it is a prophetic of the fact that Dod would meet with Yahweh's Amma. She is the most productive of women. And that is the message of and the portrait that is painted in the final word picture in the 31st Mashal, which we're going to continue on our evening program. And in there is also her telling Dod that you need to reclaim your kabod with God, your significance. You are the most significant person in the world. You need to man up at this point. You made a mistake. Let's own it. Let's grow beyond it. Let's show God that you can be trusted and relied upon. And then you can fulfill Pesach, Matzah, and Bakodim, and the world is taken to a better place. And we return to Eden. And so what I learned by that whole process is that this was the failure of Eden, which is why God caused the fall of man, so that we would have the opportunity to demonstrate that we could be observant, that we could be thoughtful, that we could be responsive, and that we could be reliable. And so recognizing that, there would be a number of people that would prove it as we approach this return of Yahweh. And they'll be harvested on Shabuah. And they will return to be the mentors and the teachers of our return to Eden, where there'll be 1,000 years to work with the mortal remnant of Yisrael and with some Goyim as well, and to model the kind of responsibility, the kind of aptitude and attitude that God is looking for, so that they can join those of us who God's going to trust to empower and enrich, so we can go off and explore that universe together. That's the purpose of being brought back into Gan Eden, 1,000 years, to model this, to get it right. So there will be numerous people that can enjoy Dod as their king and grow from the tree of knowledge. So the most appealing attributes and the most valuable qualities and useful aptitudes are all being offered to us, so that we can gain them by being observant, by being thoughtful, by listening to God, by processing the information that He has given us, so that we come to Yada know, we come to Bien understand, and then we come to Asha. We engage, we act, we do, we make a contribution. We're about the family business. And that ultimately, as we're growing together with God, just as the case with Dod, his beloved son, when we trip and fall, we get back up. When we make a mistake, we learn from it and grow past it and are wiser and better for the experience. We show God that we can be trusted. And when we can be trusted, He's put in a position where He can respect us to the degree necessary to bridge that gap that Dod is talking about here, so that we can go travel and explore the stars with their Creator. And that is the message of Mizmor Lyrics to Sing, Psalm 8, 3, 4, and 5. So until this evening, not many hours from now, at what is 5 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, 6 o'clock here in the middle of the Caribbean Sea, we look forward to returning with you and exploring more that we can learn from the Word of our God. Good day.